Okay. Wow, that was a heavy-hearted subject today. We're talking about National Suicide Week, National Suicide Month, and
Hmm.
we brought our good friend Yuli here, who has done a lot of work in this area. And I don't trust anyone more than Yuli to help us have this difficult conversation.
Yeah, and that's really one of the biggest takeaways for me is that we have to talk about it. We have to talk about suicide. We have to be willing to talk about people who have died from suicide, and be willing to ask people who seem like they might be considering it if they are, and just talk about what is it and what it means and how permanent it is and just all of that. We need to be open to talk about it. And so obviously trigger warning for all our listeners today. This is a tough topic for sure, and it's a tough episode, but you are going to get some helpful information that I hope will help you, especially if you are dealing with suicidal thoughts or if someone you love or know or someone in your life is. So it's difficult. Take care of yourself if this is a trigger for you, but it is important. And again, we have to talk about it.
The world is a lot right now. Are you feeling it? We all need new tools to help us walk through the chaos with grace, ease, and compassion for each other and for ourselves. In this podcast, you'll hear from parents, educators, and other experts who can bring perspective to the monumental job of parenting. It's time to level up and be warriors for our kids and our communities. This is the Warrior Parent Podcast. I'm Marci Mitchell.
And I'm Debbie DiManno. As parents, we understand that it really does take a village to raise our kids. We hope that this podcast serves to create and support that community for you. Join us as we discuss and practice our core tools, which are proven mind-body techniques that can be used by anyone to improve your life on a daily basis.
Welcome back to the Warrior Parent Podcast. We're very glad that you're joining us today. And this is our first episode in the month of September. And we are dedicating our topics this month to the topic of suicide prevention. And so today we are going to be speaking with our good friend, Professor Yuli Rodriguez, or as we know her, Yuli. A little bit about Yuli. She is a psychology professor at our local community college, Folsom Lake College, as well as a mother of three and co-founder of our nonprofit, Cour Experience. Her passion for teaching is rooted in helping her students use psychology and evidence-based tools to promote health in all aspects of life. Yuli spent 6 years as a counselor on a suicide hotline and has done extensive training in the area of suicidal ideation, prevention, and education. She's also currently working on her doctorate as well as writing a book. And we are so happy to have you back, Yuli. Thank you for joining us.
I am so happy to be here as usual. It's wonderful to reconnect and to share knowledge. So let's get to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we love all things Yuli. I think this is Yuli's third episode
I
with
think so.
us, or
Yeah.
maybe fourth.
Yes.
As Marci mentioned, she's on our board for Core Experience, and we have known Yuli for, gosh, maybe 12 years or so
I
now for
think
me
so.
anyway. So we go back a ways.
Yes, we do.
And Yuli and I first started doing some work around self-love. And this topic is a little bit different from that one. But as you know, Marci and I are not going to stay away from any difficult subjects. And I believe that this is the most difficult thing that we can talk about. And we are dedicating most of the month to it. And I was just doing a little research on National Suicide Prevention Month, which is why we're here to educate and inform. But I was also curious about the yellow ribbon. It's called Yellow Ribbon Student Prevention, Suicide Prevention. And so the yellow ribbon is to acknowledge the teenagers specifically. And I just never knew that. So anyway, shout out to all those doing that work. So without further ado, we're going to talk about like maybe not so much personal stuff, but a little more about logistics. I think a lot of people don't even want to breach the subject of suicide.
Mhm.
And so this is a good forum to be able to have this discussion, and people can listen and learn about some basic things. For example, how do you know when someone's suicidal? So Yuli, let's let you get into that because you're the trainer. So I'll let you take it away.
So by the time you get to the warning signs, there's been a lot of stuff that's been going on inside the individual for a long time. So how do you know? There are the basic warning signs is you see the person pulling away. So by the time the person gets to suicidal, being actively suicidal, in their minds, they've gone through all the different ways they can solve the problem. And now they're at that place of they've tried everything in their minds, and now they're done and they're ready. And so when that shows up, a person will start doing certain behaviors. They'll start maybe giving their things away. They'll start to talk about things are going to be better next week.
Mhm.
Not necessarily because things are going to be better, but because they've decided on Tuesday at 10, they're going to take that bottle of pills they've been saving. You're going to, what's
Do you
that?
think, I'm wondering as you say that, and it feels really important, is it common for people to sort of plan it that way? Like to have a time, to have a, I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but that if you're in that place where you just feel like there's nothing that's going to happen for you, nothing's going to make it better, that once you make that plan, you might almost feel a sense of relief, like, okay,
Yes.
now I'm going to do it. So talk a little bit
So
about that,
that's
because
one of the, we can all understand that people will say things like, I wish I was dead, or things like that. You're going to hear those things. And those are common. And I think a lot of those are common sense. One of the big warning signs that people don't talk about is that sense of improvement. Sometimes someone will start to feel uplifted, and people who don't understand that that's a possible warning sign will see it as, oh, what a relief. She's feeling better. He's doing better. They're doing, they're coming out of it. They're coming out of it because, again, Tuesday at 10, they're planning on taking the pills they've been hoarding.
Yeah.
We don't. So that is someone who is, because they have that sense of relief, and that is a warning sign. And you can go up to someone, and when they do that, it is totally legit and wonderful to say, hey, what's going on? Why are you feeling better? What's making you feel better? Are you, and just to don't put that in that conversation, but just ask them why they're feeling better.
That's the other thing that I think is really important, that for a long time it's felt like, and it wasn't based on research or anything, it's just the way we did it, that you don't talk about it. You don't put that in their mind, as if you ask someone, are you thinking about committing suicide, that you're going to they're going to be like, oh, hey, that's a great idea.
Yes. No,
so
that's
talk
never
about the importance of talking about it, of bringing it out, of the place of shame and darkness and into the light where we can maybe have some ability to change it.
Exactly. So if you know someone's depressed, we all know people around us are depressed. We know that people around us are struggling. You're never going to implant that idea by saying, hey, and don't be vague. Like, are you thinking of ending things? Don't do that. Be real clear, real direct. Hey, are you thinking of ending your life? Are you thinking of dying from suicide? Are you, real clear, real specific? They're going to say one of two things. They're going to say, oh, no, man, I'm good. I'm just, just really down, and maybe they'll say, hey, can we talk? I'm just really feeling down. Or they'll go, or they'll say, you know what? Yeah, bam. And then you're next, and you cannot ask, here's my pointer, especially if these are kids. I know this is directed to parents, but if you ask the question and you hear a yes, you need to be able to act. You need to be able to take the initiative and act. You can't just blow them off.
Right. And that's the big next thing. And maybe that's why people don't ask sometimes, because we don't know what to do. What if they do say yes? Then what? Then what?
Then you do not leave them alone.
Yeah. So
I'm
glad you're here to help with what's next.
Yeah. I want to circle back a little bit, you guys, because I think those two things, for some parent who's listening to this going, okay, like there's got to be some other way, right? Because the poor parent who is on the back end of this doesn't see that, right? Like somebody can be depressed, but what is it? And it's difficult with teenagers, right? Because there's this thing called mood swings. And teenagers are moody all the time, right?
Yes.
All the time. So that doesn't seem abnormal, but maybe it's just a different type of mood that maybe you haven't seen before, right? The other
Right.
thing that I was reading about was changes in the way they eat,
Mhm.
right? So like maybe they're just eating like crazy, maybe completely different. Maybe they were eating really healthy and now they're just eating a bunch of crap, or maybe they're
Mhm.
not eating at all, right? And
Right.
then I think the other big one is sleep,
Yes.
right? Like what's changing in their sleep? Are they up all night? Or are they, right? And I
Yeah.
think those are some sort of practical
Right.
things that any parent who's listening, who's worried about this,
Right.
some things that they can sort of
And
sort
those
of
are markers of
check the box.
depression. Changes in sleep patterns, changes in eating patterns are linked to depression. And we know depression so suicidal ideation is not itself a diagnosable psychological disorder, but it can stem from depression, and changes in eating patterns, changing in sleeping patterns are key. Also, let's say they were really big into, D&D, or they were really big into some kind of music or whatever, and they're no longer into it. They're starting to
Yes.
pull away from those activities. Like they were playing a musical instrument, they were really into it, and then they drop it. So
Yes.
seeing changes and then losing touch with friends, pulling away from friends, pulling away from their friend group, or not having a friend group. So when we look at, there's a different name for it, but Joiner's suicide, I think it's called the socio-emotional theory of suicide, has 3 markers. And the 3 markers are seeing yourself as a burden, and it's an internal perception based on how things are happening. Maybe they're being really moody, and maybe the family is getting real frustrated with them and they're feeling like a burden. So a sense of excessive burdensomeness is one.
Yeah.
2, a sense of disconnect, of not belonging, a sense of isolation. And we're seeing so much of this in our
Yes.
adolescents because of their dependence on social media. They see them as friends, but those people are not friends. They're not people you could call at 3 a.m. when you're really struggling. The 400 people, 800 people that follow you on Instagram or friends and wherever, or even other social media people, or even people in school, they're not developing those close friendships that fill our hearts, that make us feel connected. We all need to belong.
Yes.
The 3 of us have had these conversations outside of these podcasts, knowing that people need to belong. They need to have a sense of connection. So imagine feeling like a burden, not feeling connected to anything of value or importance, and bonding is so critical to us. And the third one is the capacity for self-harm. These kids are cutting already. And to be, I'm hoping, I don't know if we said anything about trigger warnings, but
Yes.
it takes, if they're cutting themselves, it just takes an extra deep cut in just the right place to tip someone into. So some suicidal ideation, some can be planned, but some of it is also like, I'm going to take this dose of whatever drug is the drug of choice, and if I live, I live. If I don't, I don't. Or I'm going to spin the wheel in my car, and if I get into an accident, I do, and if I don't, I don't. It's kind of this Russian roulette type of attitude around life.
They start taking risks that they wouldn't
Yes,
otherwise take, right?
yes,
And
that's
and
the
that's
other
part
piece.
of why when we talk about things like gun safety or
Yeah.
medicine safety, like if you take that opportunity away, we say like, oh, if someone really wants to do it, they're going to do it. And yes, maybe, but also maybe not. Maybe if it wasn't that easy in that very low moment,
Right.
just having a lock cabinet might be enough to
Mhm.
stop it.
Right.
Because sometimes that's all we need is that moment, because we all get down. We all get in these situations where we're just like, ugh,
Yeah.
my life, or it's too hard, or I can't do it. And one of the things that I think comes with age and with doing the work to get yourself, to do the work all around what's going on, your awareness and everything, is that you start to understand that this too shall pass. And if you have that, once you start to have that in your mind, when you walk into these dark times, they're still dark, they still suck, you still got to walk through them, but you can have this rational part of your brain saying, it's okay, you know, this too shall pass. It will get better. I can go through this. And maybe this is where, especially with younger people and kids and people who have not developed this as well, we can show up and be that person
Right.
to say, it's okay. You know, I
Right.
know this sucks right now. Not like, hey, be happy, but this sucks. I'm going to hold your hand, or I'm right
Yeah.
here, or it, you know, it will get better. I promise you, or whatever the things are that we can say, just showing up to remind people that tomorrow's a new day, or
Well, that is the thing, because when you look at brain development, you know, the frontal cortex, which is right here.
yes,
This is the part, it doesn't develop until the age of 25.
yeah,
And so when we have, and until then, you have our emotional center driving the bus. And everything is huge and very dramatic. And I will never love again. And I'm never going to get into that school. And I'm never going to, you know,
Yeah.
kids have, you know, died from suicide because of a B in chemistry. You know, so it's one of those things can become so huge in that age. And like you said, life experience, this too shall pass. Or, hey, this isn't as big of a deal. I can love again. This relationship broke down, but I can do this. I've done this before. I've overcome this. I've overcome failures. I can do this. And then we as adults can, you know, be there, hold their hands and say, you know what? Yeah, I know my high school experience wasn't like your high school experience, but I survived. This is not going to be huge when you're 40, you know, or even when you're 25.
Yeah.
This, you know, whatever
Yeah.
you can,
Yeah.
you know, so, but we have to listen. So when we ask the question, and they say, yes, can I talk to you? You have to put everything aside. This person is your primary focus. And if you're a young person that asks a person your age this question, it's good to have somebody that you can talk to. You get another resource. You show up to that person, you're there with that person, but you have to ask them what their plan is. If they have a plan, what the plan is. And again, like you said, Marci, if the plan is a gun or a firearm, the law enforcement needs to be called at that point. I know they're going to hate you, but they'll be alive to hate you. Because you don't want to go there. Because what we see that in some of the data is some of the murder suicides are that. It's sometimes you need to do something so horrific that tips you over the edge that then leads to your suicide. You don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
So you don't go, because especially if the person is emotionally activated. You don't want to be in that space when there's a live firearm. So that's when you call law enforcement. Again, they're going to be alive to hate you. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
But under any other circumstance, you show up, you're there with the person, you ask them to give you the pills, and or whatever the tool is, the pills, it's usually pills or alcohol or whatever. You ask the knife or razors or you know, tell them to, and they will be willing. They will actually, when they are willing to talk, they want someone to take over. They don't want to die. The object of this is not to die, it's to find a solution. And in their mind, dying is the solution, but that's not what they want. So they will easily give you whatever it is that they were going to use. It's actually a relief to let that go.
Yeah.
And having those conversations, listening to the stories, and then being there with that person, asking them what they, you know, and do not make any promises. We cannot say, oh, tomorrow's going to be better. You don't know.
Yeah.
Then now you're a liar.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
Right.
But the line is always, if you die today, you won't find out. And use the word death. Be comfortable with that word, because that's what it is. When I was on the hotline, I've had especially adolescent callers. It's like, well, they're coming to the funeral. They're going to be upset. They're going to see how much they hurt me. I'm going to have black orchids at my funeral and all this, like, you know, imagery. And when I'm talking to these teens on the phone, my repetitive statement was, but you'll be dead. You'll be in the coffin. You will be buried in the ground. It's okay to be that graphic, because that's what it is. It's death. You're not coming back. You will not be here to see people. You will not hear their sorrow and comfort. I mean, whatever you feel about what happens after death, the thing is, your body, you as a human, won't be here anymore. You will cease to exist. You will be dead. And it sounds really intense and graphic, but that's what needs to happen, because for some people, suicide seems romantic.
Yeah,
People
that's
will
kind of what I was thinking when you were saying that about the idea that, oh, there's gonna be black
Orchids.
orchids at my funeral, and
Yeah.
like that sounds like someone who's sort of
Right.
romanticizing, like,
Yeah.
and I know, I remember that kid brain and sneaks in sometimes still, where someone does something and you feel like you need that, right? Like they'll be sorry sort of thing, like you want something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so again, that coming in with the rational, that's not what this is about. And
Well,
talking about saying the word, you will be dead.
and isn't the other thing, Yulina, this is not if you're on a hotline. This is if a child is sitting with their friend, or if you're sitting with a friend of yours, to have to be empathic and have some empathy, right? To, like, they say, like, oh my gosh, like, I can't imagine this world without you, right? Like, to know how you're going to affect this other person's lives, and all the people, what about your mother and your sister who you're super close to and she looks up to you, like that sort of stuff, right? Like,
Mhm.
and then being really, really present. You know how we can be distracted by a phone or whatever, but you're looking straight into their eyes,
Right.
right? Like, there's not a single distraction in that moment, because they need to feel the energy, that they are not alone in that moment, that you are right there with them,
Right.
holding them, whatever you got to do, right?
And that's it. Because when I was doing,
Crying with them, letting them see
yes,
how much this will affect
yes,
you,
yes. No, for
right?
sure. Because one of the things, so people knew I did this in my family, and I come from a big Greek family. My big fat Greek wedding, that's my family. Yeah. So people my cousins would call me, and they'd say, that thing you do in Berkeley, because that's what the hotline was, and I'm like, what thing I do in Berkeley? I wanted them to I wanted them to
Say it.
say it,
Yeah,
right?
say it.
And they're, so again, that's what I'm feeling. And that's what I'm feeling right now. And I'm like, okay, I don't drive. So I was like, you got to come to my house, because here's the thing. You've told me. So either you come to my house, or we find some way to meet, or I'm calling your parents. And do not hate me for it, but that's what will have to happen, because now you told me this, it's on me. It's going to kill me. If you die, it's going to destroy me. If you die and you don't come over, and I can't help you, and I can't be here for you, and I can't intervene, your death will have a mark on me forever.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. You can't just tell me and then leave me like this, and it's not about me, it's about us. It's about our connection. It's about how we are. And you'll be gone and I'll be devastated.
Yeah.
So
that's reminding them that they matter.
Yes.
That they are connected to you, even though they may not be feeling that.
Right.
And that's a good reminder for people who are desperate, that your life does matter. I mean,
Yes.
it's in a very different way, a wonderful life kind of thing. Like, if they're
Right.
like, you matter to me and to all these other people. And
Right.
I don't know, helping people know that there is purpose for them, that they're here for a reason.
And that's what makes me so sad, is people struggle in silence. And so that theory that we talked about, that feeling like a burden and feeling like you don't belong, when they reach out to that person needs to be ready. If there is a reaching out, if they do, or if you're the one that asks, you can't just ask and abandon. You have to engage. And not only that day or a couple days, but keep track. Hey, did you make that appointment with the therapist we talked about? I'll come with you. Do you want me to come with you? I'll come. I'll sit in the waiting room with you. We'll talk about it. We'll go have coffee afterwards. We can talk about it. Or if you're nervous, we can go, get some coffee beforehand. I'm with you. Let's go together. I'll go to the appointment with you. Continue to provide support after, because there's a crisis moment. There's basically like maybe a few days where a person is in this active space of, either they're going to spin the revolver, or they're going to speed in their car. So take whatever the fantasy, whatever the plan is. There's a limited amount of time where they are critical, but we have to be with that person after that. They can't just get us in crisis. They have to get us in sustainability. And at the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do. Yeah. But we have to not just like be there for that time and then ignore it. Yeah. Because suicidal ideation doesn't go away overnight. Yeah. It is something that people struggle with for a long time, because it took a long time to get there.
Right. I want to talk about that a little bit more, Yuli. Talk about the families, because we've talked about this a lot in other work that we've done with you, but the affect of the family and God forbid it happens, right? But I'm sure there are people listening to this who have had this happen. And what they find is that it becomes generational, right? Those levels, those very negative levels of shame, the guilt, the betrayal, the anger, like the isolation, all of those things. We hear about that, and then you hear, oh well, his grandfather did that 20 years ago, his father did that, like, so what is that, Yuli? You're the psychologist here. How does this become cyclical?
It becomes cyclical in several ways. It becomes cyclical because because here's the thing. So look at the Hemingways. Like you look at, that's like a famous family where there's suicide and depression through generations, right? So basically when Grandpa Hemingway does it, or your grandpa or grandma does it, it's like, that's how you cope. This is how our family copes. This is an option in how we solve problems. And at one point I was a co-facilitator of a survivors of suicide support group. And what we called it was survivors, but it was people who had someone die.
Right.
So one of our participants in the group, the reason why she was in the group is she was 35 years old and her mother died from suicide at 36. And it was huge. It was in her soul. I mean, it was physical within her. Is what makes me stronger than my mom.
Yeah.
How could I live past my mom's age? Does that in any way invalidate her memory? Or, how do I function in life after the age of my mother living? And she found her mother. She was 10 years old and she found her mother in the garage.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So there was the addition of, she was 10, she found her mother, this emblazoned image of her mother in the garage.
Yeah.
And now she's 35, going to be 36. And how does she live her life past the age her mother did? And so those are heavy, kind of generational or cyclical, or, we learn from our families and friends, and we learn from our families and historically how to live in the world, how to make money, how to have relationships, until we don't. And healing generational trauma is hard. It's hard. That's what my book's about to some degree. But the point being that it becomes just like alcoholism, like grandpa's an alcoholic. This is just how we deal with problems until we decide to do different.
That's the part, that's where the hope is, until we decide, until we start to say that, as like the book that's coming out, This Ends With Me, it's a different topic, but so doing the work like you talked about, maybe it's therapy, counseling group. I feel like these support groups for people who've been through something that's so specific and so horrific and so difficult can be really helpful, because you're seeing you're not alone and you're having these conversations, and it's hard. Like you said, the work, the processing the trauma is super hard. It's hard for everyone, but you got to do it. That's the only, like we say, the only way through it is through it. You got to walk through. You don't have to do it alone.
No, you don't.
You can go through it and you can do your best to heal it. Healing is not erasing it or pretending it never happened. In fact, that old style of we don't talk about that is way more harmful than talking about it, bringing it up. And, the language is changing. We've talked about this before. We don't say commit suicide because of the implication of like a crime. We say completed, and we say died by suicide, but we normalize talking about it so that people can talk about it, so that somebody can, even before they get asked, say, man, I'm in trouble right now. I need some help. I'm going to go to a teacher, go to a therapist, go to my parents, go to a friend, call the hotline, whatever, do something, because I've frightened myself now, and I'm aware enough to know that I frightened myself.
Well, and that's what happened in that group. So she was her, and then there were a couple of parents that had lost their child to suicide, like 20 years earlier, 10 years earlier, they had lost their child. And they, the child's bedroom had become a shrine, and they were still struggling with the guilt and the shame, more the guilt, like what did I miss? What could I have done differently? What could I have noticed? And what they told this young woman is, your mother was struggling, but she's looking down on you and she wants you to do better. She wants you to be strong. She wants you to have the life she didn't have. See, I'm getting a little emotional because it was a beautiful.
It is that idea that your ancestors are there. They're pulling for you.
Yes. So that's what they were saying. It's like, as a mother, I would want you to live the life I couldn't. I would want you to be the things and do the things I couldn't do. And it was a lot of tears. And it was an 8-week process. But I think some of them connected and they were talking after. Yeah. So the idea of these parents who maybe lost their child, now they have this young woman that they can support, you know. So, and some of them, so there were two couples that lost a child. One of them, that was their only child, and the other had other children. And so it's interesting to see how the other siblings dealt with the suicide as well as the parents discussed.
Yeah. You know what else I love about that story that you just told is that, you know, we have this tragedy in our family, in our lives, losing a child, which I don't know. I don't think there's anything harder than that. I truly believe that's got to be one of the absolute hardest things. And then to come through that and then to find a way to bring service to someone else, to find someone else who's struggling, and rather than just shut down and completely, you know, which no one would blame you, because again, hardest thing ever, but to take it into a purpose and to see someone else and share with them and help them through it. I mean,
yes, so it was beautiful. It was beautiful to behold. And it wasn't anything that the co-facilitator and I would have planned. I mean, it was just happened organically. And that's the best way to do it. And here's the thing, when you talk to this person that is actively suicidal, you're probably going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But anything you do that comes from your heart, you can say, hey, you know what? I don't know what to do.
Yes.
I am super scared to talk to you about this because you're talking about death. And I am super scared, but I love you and I will sit with you and I will do whatever it takes to support you is huge. Being vulnerable and honest is key, because a person who is heightened emotionally that way will sense your BS a mile away. Will sense your disconnect a mile away. So will sense your discomfort. So if you speak to it and then it's out, like, I'm really scared.
Yeah. That's how we connect. We get open, we get vulnerable, we share what we're going through, and it's sometimes the more of a mess we are in that moment, the more relatable it is, because it's like, shit, I don't know what to do. I just love you. And like, you know, you're there with them, and that's got to be important.
It is. And that is something that will just unplug any kind of hesitancy from the person who is actively suicidal. It's like, they're going to come out of that fog, because if there's a fog you're in, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've been on the floor with a bottle of vodka in one hand and a bottle of pills in the other, ready to go. And, you know, I was able to use my tools, like, to talk myself out of it. But it would have been great to have had someone there, you know, and I did. I made a phone call. I reached out to someone, and they happened to be there at 3 a.m. They knew I was struggling. And so for me to call them and them to answer was wonderful. And to just have those raw conversations, the rawness can go both ways. Like, I love you. I have never been through what you've been through. I have never struggled with that issue. I could not begin to understand what you're going through, but I am here and I love you, and whatever you need.
Yeah. I want to flip the script a little bit, just because I think we've gotten to the worst. we're at the darkest hour of suicide, but I want to flip it and talk about prevention. You know, I think as much as we're like, oh, you know, we don't talk about it or whatever, I think we have come a long way, right? And there are prevention strategies now that, at least in the US, I'm not sure how this works in other parts of the world, but there are mechanisms now. There are groups. There are places in schools. Yuli, talk a little bit more about some of the prevention strategies that you know about, other than the hotline changed. It's now 988, right?
Yes.
988.
Yes.
Okay, so that's number one. So what are some of the other things that we can talk about around prevention of this worst case scenario.
I think what you're doing is wonderful in the aspect of prevention. As parents, I think it's important, around the dinner table to say something like, hey, I just watched a podcast around this and I'm really I really get it and I want to understand. And I think, making suicide an open topic, having podcasts like this, just in the community, just talking, because by the time you get to the question of, are you thinking of suicide, it's kind of not too late, but it's really late in the game. Like you said, we want to get to prevention. I think getting people involved in finding ways to find, because loneliness is looking back on that theory, if we can create space for people to connect, whether it's clubs at school, engagement in activities, kids are, those of us who are older, we remember Dungeons and Dragons from the 80s. Kids are playing D&D now.
Oh, it's back, baby.
I know, it's back. It's huge, right? And so getting supporting your kids and coming out of their rooms and limiting some of the social media, because there's so much negativity and so much FOMO and so much competitiveness. What they don't realize is that those people the influencers that they follow have taken 100,000 selfies before they post the one that they post. That everything on social media is curated to the nth degree. Yes. And that looks normal and people compare themselves to that.
Yeah.
I have something to say on that question too, Deb, as a mom who has had suicidal kids. Both my kids suffer from depression. I've mentioned this before. We had a very dark period with my younger son. And I will say that for me, it was a reset when this started to happen, to where, and we were in a very high stress school that was had these very rigid lines about what's good, what's bad, who's good, who's bad, like all of these things. And, high rated school because test scores and grades and all this.
Pressure cookers.
Yeah, for me, it was a moment to say, whoa, what matters, and have to say to my kids, and we were never like all A's or, you got to get A's, but we certainly were like, school's important. We were putting down the stuff that had been said to us, school's important, blah, blah, blah. You get to a point as a parent where you're worried about your kid where nothing matters but your kid, keeping them alive, keeping them okay. So, pressure about school or what are they wearing? Like, you know what, this is, and, this was before my son had come out as transgender, as queer, as any of that. And I didn't really have a problem with that anyway, but for parents who are like stressing about little things, like seriously, little things like grades or like sexual experimentation, or talking about things that don't fall into this little box that we put together as good kid, good parent, sweet family. All that's going to go out the window if you get to a point where you think you could lose your child. So really just talk, like everything we've been saying, talking with them, connecting with them, hearing what's important to them, allowing them to be themselves, and supporting them. That's everything. And I just mourn for anyone who is so focused on the things they think are important and then loses their child to suicide and finds that out the most miserable, horrible way that
because as human beings at our core, we want to be authentically seen and heard. That's it.
It's pretty simple.
It's really simple.
It's really simple.
So they want it. So it's okay for you to go to your kid and go, you know what? I am totally geeky. I don't know TikTok, whatever this TikTok thing is, I am not, like, show me. And they may roll their eyes, whatever, dad, boomer, whatever they do, but you showing some interest and putting your judgments aside, well, back in my day, great. Back in your day, that doesn't have anything to do with today.
No.
We want to be seen and heard authentically. And here's the thing. You have to do that for your child. You have to suck it up. You have to put your stuff aside, your judgments, your ideas about how things should be. The should is a bad word, by the way.
Sure
stuff
is.
shooting all over the place,
Yes.
We're all in agreement on the shoulds.
So just meet your kids where they are. Family dinners are so wonderful, to have, if you can have them. Put aside your ideas and prejudices about their hair and their music.
Yep.
My kids listen to some real dark stuff like zombie something, or okay.
Marci's son makes that zombie music, actually.
Okay, see, there it is.
It's cool.
It is, but it's like I've never heard it, and I wasn't. So some parents may go, "Oh my God, turn that crap on," like our parents did with our music, like when we were listening to Nirvana,
rock and roll. Remember, was bad.
like Joan Jett's in the back parts is playing in the background. Your parents are like, "Oh my God, turn that music off." That's not. Don't do that. Don't be that parent. I mean, no. I hate to be so blunt, but we got to meet them where they're at, because their friends come and go.
Yeah,
we're there.
Yeah,
and
be there.
I'd rather let go of whatever I thought things were going to be like.
Yeah,
and still have my kid around than hold on to my ideals and lose my child.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Oh,
so
wow.
So,
this is a tough one, you guys. And
no, it is, but I'm sorry. It's the reality of things. You are choosing life and death here. And again, every kid maybe who isn't, and all families have some dysfunction. 96% of families are dysfunctional. And when I'm really bitter, I think the other 4% are lying.
Yes, they are. They are.
But they're not. But here's the thing: dysfunction. This is quick. Dysfunction, if you look at the word, means lack of function. Right. Something is missing. Something wasn't learned. So if you as parents don't ever fight in front of your kids and you think you're doing them a favor, you're not, because they never learn how to do conflict in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. If everybody gets angry and starts swearing over the littlest thing, if one of the parents or both just get all caught up in emotion, then you never know how you don't have the function of anger and understanding how anger can be something we need to address and talk about. When something makes you angry, that's a signal that something isn't right. Yeah. But if we dysregulate around anger, then our kids never learn how to deal with negative emotion in a healthy way, and it gets overwhelming. And then you have someone who can't deal with life and can't deal with maybe an abusive or angry boss. They never learn how to deal with these things, and now they're depressed because they may lose their job, and then they may lose their relationship. And now we have a person who maybe, or they have an angry teacher and they don't know how to talk to that teacher. They don't know, because they never learned how to deal with that or understand how to process that. Then they get overwhelmed and they don't know how to talk or approach that teacher. Now they're getting a B in chemistry and they're on the railroad track outside of Stanford, ready to die. I mean, it's these, so I'm not saying that all families have to kind of get functional, but understanding that the way that we are with our kids, it's affecting them.
Of course.
And so
well, Yuli, we know you're not that teacher. You're not the angry teacher.
No, I'm the teacher that,
yeah.
Let's get functional though. I like that. Like, why would we not want to become more functional? Why are we here if it's not to be more functional and to do better than our parents did, so that our kids can do better than we did, so that their kids can do, and that we can grow and we can get better at humaning together.
Right. Yeah. And so we understand.
Okay, well, you know what? I want everyone to take a breath. Take a deep breath if you're listening. This is some hard stuff that we've been talking about today, but it's important. And I want to remind you and let everyone know that in America, we now have the national suicide hotline, rather than a bunch of them all over. 988 is going to get you to someone wherever you are. And sometimes you have to wait on hold. And I just was hearing a radio show about that the other day, and they were talking about the hold movement, or the music that's on hold. But if you call, just wait, just breathe, hold on. Somebody's there who cares. They just don't have enough people yet, but they are going, it matters. So have that number, share that number with people who need it. And Yuli, what's like your final thoughts on this very important topic?
So one other thing I want to say about the hotline before we get off.
Yeah.
You can be a parent and call. It's not just for people who are suicidal. You can have a friend, you can be a parent. you can
There you
call
go.
and ask for guidance. So it's not just for suicide.
Yeah, so nobody's alone. Like
Right.
if you're trying to help someone, you're not alone either. There's a
Right.
number to call. Thank
Exactly.
you.
So I want to make
That's
that
important.
clarification as well.
Yeah.
So and I think we need to get real as humans. We need to look at our stuff, and we need to just get into our authentic self. We can't go wrong being real. Just being real, being the kindest version of ourselves, being real in the world. We are going to touch people. We're going to have people touched by us, and we're going to leave the space better than we found it.
Wow.
Yes.
Yuli, thank you so much for this conversation and being blunt and honest and vulnerable. We love you. And thanks for showing up. And please, everyone who's listening to this, if you know anyone who's in this situation, please share the podcast, and hopefully you'll get some prevention. And
You save a life.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And now for your core mental health break. This is your opportunity to take a moment to support your mental wellness, your peace of mind, your own ease and grace. Take some time every day to support your mental health. You deserve it, and it matters.
So let's just take a moment to breathe. We'll take 3 deep intentional breaths to just bring ourselves to a place of center and calm. So breathing in through the nose, allow your chest and your belly to fill with air. Pause for a moment at the top of the breath, holding it before you release it. You can blow it out through your mouth, like you're blowing it out through a straw, or just release it through your nose if that's more comfortable. And now again, receiving that breath in, filling the chest, filling the belly, pausing at the top of the breath, and then release it all. Releasing it slowly and intentionally, calming your nervous system. One more time. Breathing in, pausing at the top, and releasing. Thank you for pausing for yourself today. Your mental health is important, and you deserve peace, calm, and ease in your life every day. So please, choose to receive it. It is always available right at your center, your heart, your core. Stay well, friends. Thanks for listening to the Warrior Parent Podcast, which is a production of our nonprofit, Cour Experience, who also creates and distributes Cour tools. You can find us at courexperience.org. Make sure you join us next week for another informative conversation to help you and your family show up mindfully, purposefully, and joyfully with each other and in your community.
Our Cour Tools platform consists of a number of proven tools and techniques that are designed to reduce stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in spite of what's going on in your world. We want to thank Samuel Hale, LLC, for sponsoring this podcast. Technical and marketing support comes from Inspire Your Brand. Our podcast editor is Justin Beeden. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts, the producers, or the financial supporters. I'm Debbie DiManno.
And I'm Marci Mitchell. Thanks for listening. If you resonate with the idea of creating a community to help support kids and families, won't you join us by following the podcast and sharing this episode? You can even write a review. It truly does take a village, and we appreciate you.